UFC 302 is in the books, and it was not to be for Dustin Poirier. Didn't get the job done on the night, put up a valiant effort, but the man of the hour was Islam Machachev, who showed a level of dominance, who showed a level of well-roundedness to defend his lightweight title for the third time. The fantasy was obviously Dustin Poirier finishing the story, getting that much elusive lightweight title ahead of the main event in Newark, New Jersey. Co-main event action fell on the hands of Sean Strickland and Costa. We'll cover those two fights and the rest of the card. We're going to talk a little bit about the main event and what that means. The card was not good overall. But let's get straight into it, Harry. Let's talk about the main event. Let's talk about the effort that Dustin Poirier put in to try and dethrone the champion Islam Machachev. Somewhat competitive is what I called it on the big podcast this week, and I think that was probably the right terminology for it. It made it more exciting because I was expecting pure dominance really going in to this fight from Islam. We didn't quite get that, but we got dominance in other kind of ways, and I'm curious to hear, good sir, about what you thought overall about the main event performance from both fighters.
So, to coin a jiu-jitsu phrase, right? What we watched is we watched an elite level brown belt against an elite level black belt, and it's competitive. It really, really is. Like, it is competitive. The black belt is being made to work for everything he is getting, but he's still getting it. He's still getting it, and eventually we're gonna get a submission, or what in this fight we actually got a submission. But what I mean in the jiu-jitsu analogy, we're gonna get a submission eventually, right? He's gonna work himself to a submission eventually. The brown belt is going to make a mistake eventually.
We're under Eddie Bravo rule, submission only.
Exactly. What we're looking at here is the black belt being given a run for his money, right? He certainly wasn't stomping on him like he did Charles Oliveira, right? He wasn't stomping on him like he did to, say, Thiago Moises in one of his fights previously. It was very much a back and forth fight. I think Dustin, again, proved how gritty and how determined and how tough and how seasoned he is, how skilled he is in a variety of different positions. You could see that Dustin was constantly posting on social media pictures of him and Mateusz Gamrot.
Yeah.
Training. And you could tell that Mateusz Gamrot in this camp put in some serious effort trying to emulate Islam Machachev. And I was so impressed with Dustin in that he never really got close to Islam, not close enough that the tide would ever turn, but there was never, ever a piece of quit in him. And I think we must give him absolutely massive props for that.
100%. Like I said it to Shawnee on the big podcast this week, that to get over the hurdle of even that first round where you find yourself in a kind of situation after 1 minute to have your back taken by Islam Machachev, and it couldn't have got any worse than that. So for him in round one, but to be able to bounce back from that was absolutely phenomenal, and put in a competitive second round, a competitive third, fourth and fifth round before the actual submission came. Harry, take us through the fight and what you took from it in terms of things Dustin was trying to do to counteract the wrestling of Islam Machachev, and obviously vice versa, the counters of the counters from Islam. In terms of takedown, I think I seen Islam switching from single leg attempts to mid-fight going back to body lock attempts because the single leg attempts weren't working, to back to single leg attempts at the very end, which brought on the finish as well. It was super impressive from both guys. Very curious to see and hear what you think of it from an analysis perspective, an analytical perspective.
So the first thing I'll make is actually not answering your question at all, but it's
fair
that I'm really desperate to talk about, and that's that it's not published yet, but Islam Machachev is my severe spotlight this week, and he is because this is the highest level of interfighting, what I'm going to call interfighting. That's a phrase I've just coined, by the way, just completely off the top of my dome. So
Chalk it down.
Fair play to me. I win the fair play award this week. You don't see a fighter that is able to mold and transition between the fighting ranges as beautifully, smoothly as Islam does. Does he look like Shakur Stevenson when he's boxing? No, he doesn't. He doesn't. Does he look like Ernesto Hoost when he's kicking? No, he doesn't. But everything he is doing is with intention and is effective. When he's out striking with Dustin Poirier in boxing range, he's parrying Poirier's hand, he's feinting, he's level changing, he's calling Dustin on with his footwork, he's laying traps with his footwork. The right hand, the jab, was so cultured in this fight. He would double up on the right hand, land the left behind it. He would switch stances and offer Dustin a slightly different look. He'd be constantly hand fighting. The head movement was fantastic. Some of the pivoting and the fading away was beautiful. That's just in kickboxing range. When we get to that sort of pocket range, his ability to dart and weave and move his head, immediately find that plum clinch. He likes to find it's sort of an over-under, but it's not quite a full over-under. He doesn't give Dustin a full underhook, but he traps Dustin's wrist with his elbow, and he has like a shotgun grip on Dustin's elbow. That sort of clinch maneuver that he has that led to the knee, which just landed all fucking night. That knee from that clinch was absolutely beautiful the entire night. The elbows on the clinch, the dirty boxing when he got to uppercut range, how he transitions that into wrestling, how he transitions from when he hurts Dustin, lands well, lands the elbow when he's cutting inside, lands the right hand to stutter Dustin back and immediately level change in the wrestling. When he forces Dustin to believe that they're having a round of just striking, he's comfortable in the striking, immediately level changes. Doesn't give a shit whether he finishes a takedown or not. Immediately back up into striking. Just the fluidity of Islam Makhachev's MMA is something that we have not seen at this level of modern mixed martial arts against this level of opponent ever before, I don't think. And so round by round, round one, I really thought that what we were going to see was a Khabib blueprint 101. You take him down, you just wear him out, you gas him, you tire him, and then rounds 4 and 5, if you want to strike, you can go and strike. No stress. But round one takes him down, body lock, back triangle, the works. Fish for a few chokes. There wasn't anything really doing. Dustin was doing a good job. He was landing some shots from the back, was Islam. And the one thing the one technical detail I just wanted to bring up, and then I'll bring you in because otherwise I'm going to be talking for 35 minutes.
No. Please continue. Don't let me interrupt.
Is when you are looking for a hip bump sweep from close guard, you drive your hips into your opponent and you generally reach behind the back of the head and you grab the tricep, you pull the tricep, which is removing the base, and then you bump them over to mount, right? It's like 101 basic white belt type stuff. Islam was doing the opposite from the back control. So he was gripping at the tricep because Dustin was doing a good job of framing on Islam's shoulder to stop the chokes from coming in. And so he would bridge into the spine of Dustin, grabbing his bicep to strip the frame. And what he was attempting to do there was, as he strips the bicep, to force Dustin's chin higher so he could then use his right hand, his free hand, the hand that he was posting on the mat with, to loop a choke underneath. Now, somebody that does something similar to this, but not the same, is Ethan Crelinsten, who's a very, very high-level Canadian grappler. But to see the sort of innovation in an MMA sense, because as Islam was building up and trying to talk his body into Dustin, his face was available for shots, right? The only hand that Dustin could be landing shots with is that right hand. And so Islam taking a bicep grip and trying to force the Dustin onto that post just completely eliminated any striking option and forced Dustin to either concede bottom mount, which is obviously horrific, concede belly down back mount, which is obviously horrific, or to sort of stay in this static position where Islam could maneuver him sort of where he wanted and stay safe. Was just god tier stuff, like absolute god tier control from Makhachev. Now we get to round two. Dustin stuffed the first takedown, and you could see the confidence swell in him. The right hand started to flow, the footwork started to flow. He started to talk to Islam a little piece, started to beckon him on a little bit. And it was a competitive round. I was impressed with Dustin forcing Islam to switch from the double to the single and then trying to limp leg out, allowing his hips to hit the mat, looking for switches, looking for underhooks, looking for dogfight positions where he could take, you and I in the preview talked about this from the Alexander Volkanovski fight, where if Dustin wanted to fight the wrestling, it wasn't the smartest thing to just conventionally try and sprawl. Right, you're going to have to try to beat him in the transition, and that's what he tried to do. Round 3 again, close round in terms of that it was effective and from both sides. Round 4, it is what it is, and round 5, I mean, it's just masterful, absolutely masterful reading of a fighter, masterful fight IQ.
I haven't seen you this excited to talk about a fight since Islam Machachev versus Alexander Volkanovski won, and Islam Machachev tends to do this to you. You know what I mean? As a guy who self-admittedly said that he struggles to watch fights a long period of time right now, I don't think you have any problem in watching Islam Machachev. I think you'd watch that man fight every single part of the weekend. And I think there was a time when we were talking about Alexander Volkanovski, and a time where, some of his movement, some of his striking, some of his distance control and stuff like that was almost so high level, it was almost ununderstandable. And I think Islam Machachev has kind of fallen under the same kind of criteria here with some of the stuff that he's doing in there. You see him getting hit, and you see all this, but like, you're at high level mixed martial arts and you're going to get hit and you're going to take some level of damage. I thought his durability was excellent in the main event as well. Like, there was 2 predicaments that he had to face, and obviously that Dustin Poirier had to face. Obviously, Poirier had to fight on the outside. Islam chose to fight on the outside because you don't want to be caught in the pocket with Dustin Poirier. But what Islam really had to counteract in terms of his takedowns was he couldn't counter the striking of Dustin Poirier because Dustin Poirier wasn't throwing in 4s and 5s like he normally does. I think an excellent kind of piece of the puzzle that Dustin Poirier tried to counteract Islam Makhachev's wrestling with was the fact that he was just throwing single shots, or he wasn't really, biting down too much on his jab and wasn't allowing Islam to come in under and kind of counter those 4 or 5 punch combinations we normally see with a takedown. Obviously, you're mid punch, and if you can time those punches, you're going to be able to secure those takedowns a hell of a lot easier. But he ended up finding ways and means throughout the fight, and obviously Dustin Poirier found ways and means to get away from the grappling somewhat as well. But Islam's tenacity to continue with the game plan, to not give up on the takedowns, was ultimately the result of him getting the finish in the end. And the sequence to the finish, the leg drag, was unbelievable. Like, that was no mistake. That's an actual technique. I saw what the name of the technique was last night, and it's after forgetting me. What can you surely know what it is?
I don't know the name of the technique. There is a specific technique, but I'm not sure what it is. But
yeah, it's like a gooseneck throw or something like that, something along those lines, where it was absolutely unbelievable, like the way he pulled it off. And that was completely done on purpose to create that scramble position, to create that like level of madness, and to have the strength and to have the confidence to go and secure that Darce choke through the end of the fight was unbelievable, Harry.
Where do we start? Like, where do we start?
Wind up and go on, brother.
Yeah, like to just talk about the first part. I would happily watch either Dustin Poirier every weekend or Islam Machachev every weekend. I think, Dustin's not going to get the credit he deserves, I think, for this performance, but we haven't seen somebody stuff that many takedowns from Islam Machachev, I think, ever. Alexander Volkanovski certainly didn't stuff that many takedowns. Saryukin didn't stuff that many takedowns. And Dustin managed to, he lost, fine. He got finished, fine. But that is the story of Dustin Poirier. He either puts somebody out on their shield or he goes out on the shield himself, And the thing, I just chuckled, right? When I saw it first, that leg whip, I just chuckled because that's a child playing, is what that is, right? Like, you've got a man that dives on a single, pulls himself out, pulls his hips out, and Dustin's looking at him for a sec like, what the fuck's he trying? Like, I'm not, bless you. What the fuck's going on? Bless you again. I just can't. There's half a second where Dustin's like, I ain't got a fucking clue what's happening here, and so I'm just gonna try and hit him. And Islam had read that reaction and understood his opponent to that depth that he knew he was gonna hit him. He knew he was going to try and hit him. And the moment that he took his elbow away from his rib and compromised the base and made that leg light, gone, whipped, gone. Now, of course, what's Dustin going to do? He's going to scramble back to his knees, right? He's going to scramble to a front headlock, because what else are you going to do? You can't run with your back and put your head on the cage and try to win an elbow inside, because Islam's got a back body lock and you're going to Makhachev town. And so he did the right thing and he turned a front headlock, and Islam knew exactly what was happening. Immediately got his chest over the left shoulder of Dustin, cut the angle, looked for the bolt cutter grip, sat him down, Das. And the specific finish to the Das, I've watched it a couple of times because it's not perfect, right? How you would teach.
It wasn't your traditional
No.
entry. It looked more like kind of an irregular style guillotine choke or something like that as well. The way he kind of he was looking for that, like, looked crunch first, but then even the grip, he gripped the forearm instead of the bicep to kind of really lock it in. I think maybe he might have got it around to the bicep, but why am I butchering trying to explain it? You looked at it a couple of times. I'm sure you'll break it down 100 times better than I could.
So what he did that is slightly abnormal is, and I've seen it once before, but not with the same grip style that Islam was using. So traditionally, right, when you lock up a Das, you're almost like a T shape with your opponent, right? Your opponent is sort of the spine of the T, and you're the top, and then you've sort of wrapped your arms around their neck, and then often you'll see people teach you to like walk in a clock motion. Now, sometimes, if you have a good grappler, they will sort of frame on the hip and they'll be able to continue to walk around the clock and survive and stuff. And so that's where claiming the arm and etc. starts coming. Anyway, what Islam did is he rested Poirier's head on his chest / upper abdomen. Now, the reason for that is so that he can deepen his choking arm as much as possible, but it also means that as he starts to side crunch, almost like he's side planking, Poirier's carotid artery is stuffed into Islam's forearm. Now, it does look like, you can't see properly from the angle, but it does look like Islam switches to his bicep eventually. But when I first learned a Das, I was taught a Das by a fella that had a black belt that had quite short arms, and he taught a similar style of Das whereby you use the forearm grip rather than the bicep grip. And the mechanic that he's using is more that of like a wrenching motion where you're opening one elbow and closing the other elbow, rather than with a Das, what you're looking to do is squeeze your elbows together conventionally. But that opening and closing of the elbow motion will still get the crunch on Dustin's chin that we saw. And so in the moment, I think Islam realized that the conventional Das setup had failed. And so he propped Dustin up onto his chest, searched for as deep a grip as he could possibly get, and then just fucking finished him. And Dustin was tapping quick. And we know if you put Dustin Poirier in a choke, he's going to fight with everything he has. And to see him tap almost instantly, it just tells you. It just tells you there is a death squeeze in Islam Machachev. And my God, is he impressive. My God.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I quite enjoyed it as well. How did you score the fight?
I didn't give Poirier a round. I think the closest round for Poirier was 2.
Yep.
I wouldn't argue too heavily if I saw a Poirier round 2. I think round 3, again, he had his offensive moments, but Makhachev landed the better strikes. By the better strikes, I just mean the harder, more impactful strikes. And then rounds 1 and 4 were obvious Makhachev rounds. And then 5 obviously was what it was. So I wouldn't.
4 was a little close too. I live scored it probably with a little bit of expectancy bias, to be honest. And I had a 2-2 going into round 5. I rewatched it again yesterday. I had a 4-0 for Islam as well. So, I mean, super close round. Round 2, the last minute of the round for Dustin Poirier. he almost got it until Islam kind of took the fight down, landed some ground and pound on top, which I think, evened it, and obviously kind of put Islam a slight bit ahead. Chris Lee did have it scored all even going in to the final round. The other two judges obviously had Islam up, where Poirier would have needed to finish either which way, but no controversy at all. And I mean, there was some controversy. We'll get into the co-main event in a minute with the scorecards. And I think, overall, if I was to ask you the last question about this, obviously we know Arman Saryukin is next. There's not too much to talk about. Like, for you, what's the overall story of this fight?
We witnessed greatness. We witnessed the best fighter alive.
You love it.
End of story. Like I just don't like. I was thinking, and we'll get to fucking garbage co-main event shortly. But like, I was thinking of how do you beat Islam Machachev? How do you beat him? Right? And the answer is a culmination of incredibly rare traits. You have to have insane cardio to beat him. You have to have incredible durability. You have to have big, and I mean big power, like one punch knockout power in your hands. You have to have dexterity and variety in your offerings. You have to have supreme tactical awareness. Oh, and you have to be an elite grappler as well. And so to find the answer to all of those things,
it's going to be hard, isn't it?
It's going to be fucking tough.
Last question, I lied. Think Dustin should hang him up now?
Yes. Yes, because there is nothing left to prove. Somebody posted a picture of who Dustin Poirier has lost to in his career, and not a single one of those names is one that carries any shame whatsoever. He is loved. He is revered. He is as close to legend status that you can possibly get to. He will go down as probably the best fighter to never win an undisputed title. When I saw Alexander Volkanovski saying, I think me and Dustin could have a great fight, I agree, but I see no upside for Dustin Poirier. Because
the best you could probably be saying, I'm surprised to even say it, but it's a factor right now. You could probably do a max rematch for the BMF title. He probably doesn't even want that. Like that's not even.
Like, to me, MMA doesn't give us fairy tales often, right? Sometimes, but not often. If Dustin had won the title, I would have hoped he would have retired immediately.
Yeah.
Given that he didn't win the title, I don't see any reason why the answer is any different afterwards. Like, he has given I'm butchering this, but when he was talking on Fight Week about why he was thinking about retirement, he mentions, I've given so much to this. I've not been the best father I could be. I've not been the best husband I could be. I've not been the best training partner or this, or, the We Fight Foundation or whatever it is. I've not been the best this, that, the next thing. And he feels like it's time for him to give back to those people. Elongating your career to chase after Alexander Volkanovski or a BMF rematch or whatever, it's not the way to fulfill those things,
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. We could stay talking about this fight for the foreseeable future, but we got to get a move on to the co-main event. Sean Strickland won a unanimous decision, not to too many people's surprise. That was
split decision, no?
Oh, it was a split decision. Yeah, it should have been a unanimous decision. It was a split decision. Talk to me about your grievances about this co-main event, Harry.
This is middleweight. Like, this to me is middleweight. I wrote it in my notes from the fifth round, is that Sean Strickland is good enough and awkward enough to stop most fighters punishing him for the poor elements of his game. And Costa is good enough to not get whacked by Sean Strickland. But Costa is nowhere near good enough to punish Sean Strickland for his mistakes. Strickland just walks forward, right? He meanders forward. He doesn't really move his feet super well. It's just the overarching and overwhelming volume of pressure that he brings that causes problems, right? Costa at no point caught one of those teeps and said, we're going to do some wrestling things. Not once did he actually try and parry those teeps away and land a counter. Not once when Sean Strickland lifted a knee did Costa feint a level change and try to cut an angle and find a takedown. Not once did Costa. Do you remember? I know this is a niche reference, but Chris Cyborg versus Holly Holm about fucking 4 years ago. Holly Holm tried a sidekick and Cyborg stepped slightly to the right and low calf kicked Holly Holm and swept the leg out from under her, the standing leg away from her. Like, I watched Sean Strickland, and that technique is screaming out to me because he just lifts his knees for no reason whatsoever, other than to force you to take a slight reset. And Sean Strickland, on the other hand, doesn't sit down in his punches enough. I think there was 3 or 4 times in the entire fight where he sat down in his punches. And the last time he did it, he almost had Costa out with 17 seconds left of the 5th round.
Yeah, one has to wonder, where is that throughout the fight? Where is it?
That's my point. And I wrote this. Like, he could have got Costa out there. Absolutely could have got Costa out there. But because Costa's not giving him any trouble, Strickland just stays in second gear and wins the fight. Because, frankly, why should he? Right? As we've said before, and this is where you and I slightly disagree, is Sean Strickland's A1 priority: win. Don't lose. Just don't lose. However you need to win.
Yeah, but that's caused him problems. He said, when he goes to the judges, he has close decision losses. Another split decision here, like, as well. Although it was a joke of a split decision, the card was an absolute joke. But Paulo Costa deserves a certain level of criticism as well for constantly moving on the back foot. Like, I mean, Dricus du Plessis created the blueprint. Look, let's go full circle here. Like I said on the podcast, I think that Sean Strickland created somewhat of a blueprint to go out there and take on Israel Adesanya, and that was getting Israel Adesanya moving on the back foot with his forward pressure. Dricus du Plessis out-pressured and walked down Sean Strickland, which actually counteracted against Sean Strickland's style, and that blueprint was there, where Dricus du Plessis just made a decision with himself that he was just going to stand there and he was going to meet Sean Strickland in the middle, and he was going to force him in the exchanges to move backwards. And, Paulo Costa should have done the same here, because he has the power to cause even more damage than a guy like Dricus du Plessis. Like, all fight, I was shouting, stand in the pocket, stand firm and stand your ground and gain this man's respect. And he didn't do it for a fucking second. And it was so frustrating to watch. Like,
horrid.
It's just like, my goodness, like, these, like, two guys just that was like a glorified sparring session, to tell you the truth. A glorified sparring without any shin pads. Obviously, the leg checks hurt Costa, but it's just so frustrating to watch with guys. And then you have Costa coming out today saying, that's not me. I want to take heads off shoulders. I'm not fighting in that style anymore. But, like, why don't you think that in rounds 2 or rounds 3, when clearly your game plan of moving backwards?
Give it to me in round 5.
Yeah,
you're 4 rounds down. You have to find the finish, and you come out, and it's Sean Strickland pushing you back. Still,
crazy, man.
What are we? Honestly, what are we doing? Like, he should be embarrassed. You know what I mean? Like, to your point, and this was going to be my rebuttal to Costa, is Dricus du Plessis is a good athlete. Don't get me wrong, good athlete, explosive athlete. Paulo Costa is an absolute fucking specimen of a human. You don't think, and we know how hard that guy hits. We know how hard he hits. And so I just, in my notes,
he was afraid. He was afraid, I think, to commit on those shots, because it was a 5-round fight and he didn't want to get tired. But there's an unwillingness to commit and just a stark refusal to commit. And I think that was the latter for me. He just refused to commit. And fuck me, it was so frustrating, man.
Horrid. Absolutely horrid.
You said you had in your notes?
I had in my notes that if he just stuck in the pocket and landed.
Yeah.
No, we know you can rock Sean Strickland. You can push him back a little bit. You can make him question. And if you force a little bit of the dog out of Sean Strickland, he's going to give you even more openings. And yeah, I honestly, I was watching that 25 minutes of fighting, and just prayed for it to end. It was just so bad. Like, and this is going to be a rhetoric, by the way, for the rest of the card. So if you've managed to get to 30 minutes in and you don't want to hear me shit talk the rest of this card, tune out now. But that main event saved this entire fight card for me, because up and down, most of this fight card was fucking garbage. Like, garbage.
It was terrible. It was terrible. But yeah, we shall trudge on. I don't think there's too much more to say about that co-main event day, Harry. Let's talk a little bit about Kevin Holland versus Michael Oleksiejczuk. Oh no, do you know what? Do you know, before we talk about that, talk about the judge, the scorecards. Dave Torelli scoring that fight 4-1 for Paulo Costa. Is that one of the worst scorecards you've ever seen in your life?
It's more often than not, when I see a scorecard I disagree with, I do the thing that Shawnee has taught us to do, and Spencer has taught us to do, and other people that we talk to in the scene has taught us to do. And they say, try and see it from the other judge's perspective, right? Can you make an argument for that card? The answer is, I've never drank in my life. I could be blind drunk, and I think I score that fight for Sean Strickland 5-0. I have absolutely no idea where he gets 4-1 Costa from. Absolutely no idea.
Yeah, crazy. Anyways, on to Kevin Holland versus Michael Oleksiejczuk. Armbar finish here from Kevin Holland. Little bit of a scare, got a little bit wobbled onto his back. Oleksiejczuk left the arm in a little bit too long. A rookie error, really, and it cost him his arm at the end of the day. Speak to me about the finishing sequence, Harry, and how it played out.
So Holland's finishing mechanics weren't great, to be honest. What could he have done better? So he kept fiddling with the finish, right? What he really wants to do, he had the right hip. He was breaking the right arm over the right hip, which is correct. But he kept oscillating between, like, physically pushing the arm over his hip. Then he tried for a shotgun armbar. Then he tried with a regular armbar, and he kept giving Oleksiejczuk those tiny, tiny shoulder rotations that kept forcing the elbow to be somewhat free. I didn't like, I know that, again, I'm not kind of answering the question, but I didn't like the objections from Oleksiejczuk. There was definitely a break there. There was definitely a very, very, very gnarly angle that his elbow was in that it definitely shouldn't have been in. And so to argue that is silly. The referee absolutely did the right job. But Holland, again, like, it's not getting dropped by Michael Oleksiejczuk is just, what are we? This was an odd match to make in the first place. But for Kevin Holland to go out and basically show that his level is that of getting dropped by Michael Oleksiejczuk, that's embarrassing in and of itself. As you say, he leaves the arm in too long, looks for a triangle, fails the triangle, moves to the armbar, forces Oleksiejczuk to roll through in order to defend it, rolls through, ends in a regular armbar position, both feet draped across the chest. He could have brought his right knee up tight towards Kevin Holland's own chest in order to get a tighter angle of the armbar. Didn't, fine. Broke his arm anyway, fair play. Like, just
then Kevin Holland comes on the mic after and saying, "I'm the most well-known gatekeeper that you're ever going to see." Like weird way to promote yourself there, man. He's probably not right. He's probably not wrong. I mean, he's probably not wrong.
He's wrong. Yeah. Neil Magny is the most well-known gatekeeper.
Yeah, two rights.
What's he talking about? Most well-known gatekeeper. Get the fuck out of here.
He doesn't even want. Harry's not even giving him that mantle. But yeah, weird fight to add on to the card at late notice. A little bit exciting, I guess. Lots of cringiness in terms of waiting for the finish. Do you think Herb, you said it was a good finish. You think Herb might have came in a little bit sooner? Do you think it was timed just correctly?
I think it was timed just correctly because Oleksiejczuk, it was hyperextended for a while, and then there was a moment when Oleksiejczuk attempted to hitchhike her out, and you could see the elbow protruding through the pit of the elbow. Yeah. That's a break. And Herb stepped in maybe a second after he saw that. So I can't really fault him too much there, frankly. The fighters know the rules, and that's, if there's a break, you have to stop the fight. And there was a break, and he stopped the fight. Fair play.
100%. Moving on, Nico Price, Alex Morono. terrible fight again. Like, what I want to highlight here is, why was this card at this fight at the last minute thrusted up into the main card? Especially look at Alex Morono, fair play, coming in here in short notice. I don't want to be super critical of him. He took this fight in short notice, but you gotta know that he's probably only got a round and a half, and that's all that he had in him. And then, as soon as he started to tire, the competitive nature of the fight just went out the window here. So, curious to hear your thoughts. I can't see that you you have too much positive things to say about this one either.
So I really like Alex Morono. We've talked about this for a long time. He is a fighter's fighter, right? Not the best fighter in the world, but tries really hard, always tries to add to his game and whatever. I saw people tweeting saying that first round was one of the rounds of the year, and I have absolutely no idea what I was watching, because it was not the fucking round of the year to me. It was competitive. It was fine, but Nico Price doesn't know how to throw a punch other than looking like a sledgehammer. And Morono in that first round, just looked a bit slow and not focused, which, as you can kind of give him, right, when he is short notice and all these sorts of things. But yeah, it's just not a great fight. Like, it's just not a great fight. And I don't blame Alex Morono for that either, right? He tried his best. He gave what he had on the night, and I'm certainly not gonna disparage him for that. But again, just weird matchmaking all round. Like, just really, really odd matchmaking, odd fights. Just, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. The whole card was just a bit of a wash. But Nico Price is so bang average. I am sure that Alex Morono will be kicking himself for losing this fight. Kicking himself.
Yeah, I mean, Nico Price saved his UFC career, basically. That's basically the story of the fight. Terrible fight. Moving on to the main card opener, Randy Brown versus Zaleski dos Santos. Interesting battle for what it worth. An absolute mare here by the referee with the eye poke in the first round. But let's talk about the ins and outs of the fight first. Brown fought very well behind his jab, used his length and reach advantage excellently well in round one. Kind of let it fall by the wayside. I think almost in round two came out a little bit too confident, didn't he? Zaleski dos Santos took him down, got some kind of grappling off and dominance off there to even it up a little bit going into round three. Close round as well. Randy Brown did just about enough to get the win, but I think kind of made it a lot harder than what he should have, if we're being honest. But curious to hear your thoughts, good sir.
You've stolen the words right out of my mouth. Like, this fight epitomizes Randy Brown's career for me.
It absolutely does.
Comes out in round one and looks absolutely fantastic against a dangerous fighter, right? Veteran, yes, absolutely. Veteran, sure. But a dangerous fighter in Zaleski dos Santos. Just looks great. Untouchable, sits behind his jab so perfectly. Dos Santos is having fucking fits behind that jab. Can't get anywhere near him. Can't get underneath it. Can't get round it. Can't find his legs. Can't do anything, really. Just really, really struggling. And then Randy Brown comes out and he hasn't taken his foot off the gas. He's got in the boot of the car and he's left the fucking thing in neutral, right? Like, there's just nothing going on. And Dos Santos is like, great, I can bring myself back into this now. And then the coach has got in his arse at the end of the second, and the third round he came out. But by the third round, you're a bit tired. Like, you've been taken down. You've been beat up a little bit. You've been getting dragged up to your feet and doing the whole thing in round two. The gas tank just isn't what it was in round one. And now you've got to go and win the fight now. I just fucking hell. Like, if Randy Brown could have put one and then the same in two, he probably finishes Zaleski dos Santos in round three, because the frustration would have been so high that the openings would have had to have come. And I just lament. I just lament and lament and lament, because, again, Randy Brown could be so good. If he could bring round one, Randy Brown, over 3 rounds, he's a really, really solid fighter. But he just can't. He just can't. So frustrating.
Yeah, very, very frustrating. And, probably the new breed of O'Neill Magny as well, in terms of has that bags of potential, will probably turn into a gatekeeper in the welterweight division, and made that look at Alessio Zaleski dos Santos is a tough fighter to get out of there, but like the blueprint was created in round one, and I couldn't believe the way he came out. Just came out like he was going for a walk in the park there in round two, got taken down immediately and couldn't get back up to his feet. But lucky he got the job done. Your guy Roman Kopylov got the job done against Almeida. Head and hand stuff here for Harry Powell. Not a big fan of Roman Kopylov. Is there any positives that you can take from this one, Harry?
He looked shit on the feet, didn't he?
Yeah,
he looked garbage. Like you can tell Almeida's obviously got a good kickboxing pedigree, and you can see why they shoot him on in there. But Kopylov just fought smartly, which is you just take the man down and you just force him to get back up, and you force him to get back up, and then you take him down again, and then you force him to get back up, and then you just take him down again. And just a very well put together, very smart performance by Kopylov. He knew that the level was not where he was on the feet. The level was not where he was strongest, and that's fine. And unfortunately, he made it an MMA fight, which is sad for me, really, all in all. But he puts another fucking win together, doesn't he? That's Jesus. He just won't stop.
You're going to have to break him down again, son. That's it. That's the biggest fault that you have with this fight, do you?
Fuck's sake. I am gonna, like, if he'd have gone out and got absolutely fucking whacked, then maybe there's a chance he turns up at fucking LFA or whatever. But yeah, it's gonna be
at least another 3 anyway, I would imagine. But before you sign off altogether from this podcast, I guess we better move on, and let's move on to Jailton Almeida, who went out there and got Alexander Romanov out there with relative ease. No great surprise about how this fight went down. We kind of labeled it on the setup last week that it was a fight for Jailton Almeida to come in there and just remind everybody that he still is a player in the heavyweight division. Is there somewhat level of disappointment from you, Harry, that he's just still goes back to the truck, still goes for the takedown? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I know you've been a big proponent of testing yourself in different areas and fights and stuff like that, and this seemed like a good one where we could have seen a little bit of a striking exchange from Jailton Almeida, but he chose to take the fight down, locked in the submission relatively quickly in round 1, and got the job done with relative ease.
I'm conflicted in this one specifically because Romanov is garbage enough that Jailton could obviously go out and do what he did, right? And so you're not paid by the hour in MMA. If he can go out and get a minute, 2 minute, whatever it is, finish in the first round, it's hard for me to argue that, right? It is hard for me to argue that. But in the same vein, if you are Jailton Almeida, a finish is amazing, but nobody is looking. They already know that you're a fantastic grappler. They already know, right? Nobody's questioning that. Literally nobody is questioning whether you're a good grappler. What they're questioning is, what else you got? Show me something else. And for a man that, he called out Cyril Gagné for main event, co-main event on a fight night card, that's all well and good. And I understand completely why you're picking Cyril Gagné. What happens if Cyril stops the takedown? What happens? We don't fucking know. We do not know. And if he beats Cyril Gagné, then that's maybe a title shot or maybe one more before a title shot, right? So I can't believe that we have a heavyweight prospect like Jailton Almeida and we have no idea whether he can strike or not. That seems insane to me.
Well, I would say we have somewhat of an idea. The fact that he chooses not to go there would tell me that he's not confident with his level of abilities. And I think if Cyril Gane does defend the takedowns, he's going to end up knocking him out, to be honest. And it is a fascinating matchup because I think, I've doubts over Cyril Gane's takedown defense as well. So it's an intriguing fight in its own right. But I don't know whether, I don't know. Maybe one more is what he needs before getting an opportunity like that. And, if Cyril is going to be turning down fights against Tom Aspinall, he's certainly not going to take on a guy like Jailton Almeida, I don't think, any which way. But look, you got to shoot your shot. But yeah, we're criticizing here a relatively early finish. But, I'm more lines thinking as well, you did what you did there in most of your other fights, but that didn't work against high level opposition. So you're going to be faced with that again in your career, and you've got to think of a plan B, because if he goes out there and gets the takedown stuffed, doesn't appear like from what we've seen so far as a guy that does have a plan B, and that's big trouble at elite level MMA, especially in the heavyweight division, Harry.
It absolutely is. And I think Cyril Gagné, to your point, is a very smart call out. Somebody's shown you the hole in Cyril Gagné's in his arsenal, right? John Jones showed you with absolute aplomb. I think, though, there's a slight nuance to the context there. Cyril had his hands full with the striking before we got to the wrestling, before we got to the submissions, before we got to the grappling. I'm not necessarily sure that Jailton is going to have the same joie de vivre, if you will, and give Cyril something to think about on the feet, and may just end up diving on legs, right? But I agree. He probably needs one more. Right? I wouldn't mind Jailton Almeida versus Volkov. Right? Let's see how that goes. Slower, but can grapple a little bit. Obviously, massive, absolute huge human, and a good test, I think. But I still want to see Jailton Almeida at 205. I know that weight cutting.
That's amazing that you feel that way, because I know how you feel. I said that in the setup last week, but I think that is the only way. But he's trending in the wrong direction and coming in at 241. I mean, there was one time he weighed in at 215 for a heavyweight fight, which is up there, I think, equal with one of the lowest weights ever recorded for a heavyweight fight. I think, unless like someone missed weight or something at like heavyweight. But yeah, I guess a performance that leaves us wanting a little bit more from Jailton Almeida, but I'm sure we'll find out. Was a relative. He should be capable of a relatively quick turnaround here now again. So I'd be staying active. I'd be getting in there again and picking up another win. Get in there maybe against another top 15 opponent, and that's not in the top 5, and pick up another win if you can. And that builds the momentum for that Cyril Gane fight in France if it does happen. Be very interesting to see that as well. I tried to save you from this next fight, Harry. I really, really did. But it was too late by the time I got word over to you. Grant Dawson versus Joe Solecki. Dreadful fight in the lightweight division. Dreadful fight. Like, Grant Dawson could not get past the guard of Joe Solecki, and Joe Solecki could not get off his back. And that equaled a relatively boring decision loss for Joe Solecki.
I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. Joe Solecki had a tight guillotine in round 1, I guess. That was cool. And the rest of it was bang average. Like we said going in the setup that this was a really weird fight to make. Joe Solecki, somebody that's, not fighting for his UFC career necessarily, but is in and around those sorts of conversations, right? He's nowhere near a world beater, nowhere near a ranked opponent. And Grant Dawson's just lost once in the last fucking 8 fights or whatever it is, and against some high level competition. We talked about the Damir Shmagulov fight, and so it was fucking weird to put it together anyway. And speaking to Spencer, just personally, he was like, "Yeah, I think Grant Dawson should absolutely run through Joe Solecki," and I had the same opinion. And then I saw it, and I'm like,
I did too. Like, I thought he was going to run through him. Me and Theo gave plus 300 for a submission finish for Grant Dawson as one of our bets of the week. Like, we thought it was an absolute steal, but I just don't know. It was like he's gone so far backwards. Maybe there's a level of his confidence that was knocked when Bobby Green kind of put his lights out in his last fight. That can happen, but maybe it was for him getting the job done and getting that win and back into the win column. But I mean, that type of win like that is not going to do him any favors in terms of matchmaking in the lightweight division. I'd expect something similar for his next fight too. And the once lit flame of this guy making a title run, I think, has been quenched absolutely, and I do not think that it's. And we never really did think about it, but he was a top 10 ranked guy for a little bit, but we were never really too confident that he was going to be able to make strides up the division, and I think a performance like he had on Saturday night kind of confirmed that a little bit more, Harry.
Can you imagine what Dustin Poirier would have done to Joe Solecki if they'd have fought on Saturday night?
Can you imagine? About 17 guillotines?
I don't even think he would have needed one. I think they just smashed him through the fucking cage. Like,
yeah,
I don't know that there's gonna. I don't know whether somebody will ask him this question or sit down and talk with him, but I'd be very interested to see what happens with Grant Dawson over the next sort of 3 to 5 fights, and to see whether the level does demonstrably dip, and if it does, I'd love to know why. But yeah, just such a stark contrast to who he was even 2 years ago. Just a stark contrast. So, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with, if you're the UFC matchmakers, you give him Joe Solecki to be like, okay, cool, you lost a fight, no stress. Here's a demonstrable step down. Go and get a highlight reel, and then we'll build you just immediately back up, right? This is your layup. And it was a stinker.
100%. Phil Rowe and Jake Matthews threw down in the welterweight division. I think the story of this fight was Jake Matthews threw punches in bunches. Phil Rowe was non-overcommittal on his punches, was just throwing single shots. His corner were going crazy, telling him to not do to stop doing that and to start, throwing in combinations as well. And he just refused to do it, and it cost him the fight.
I think my massive hatred for this card comes because what we saw was basically the same fight play out about 7 of the fights.
yeah, that's exactly it.
And that is that nobody was willing to take a risk. Nobody was willing to change a game plan. Nobody was willing to stray from what was the party line. And, Phil Rowe's been in there and grappled with Gordon Ryan. Phil Rowe has been in there and gone and been in that new wave room and had lots of exposure to really, really high level grappling. And we saw some really cool grappling when he reversed Jake Matthews after the knockdown / takedown, and then just did absolutely nothing. Never went back to the well. Never really looked for anything else. And just both of them fought in a way that was not to lose rather than to win. And that is really, really upsetting. When you look at something like the main event, I know I keep harking back to it, but you look at a fight like the main event, both Dustin Poirier and Islam Machachev were fighting to win that fight at every single exchange. Dustin believed every time he hit him, I'm going to hurt him and I can catch him. I can hurt him. I can catch him. I know I can. I just need to find the shot. It's going to come. I'm going to find it. And Islam was just like, yeah, I'm just going to run him over. Whenever I can, I'm just going to run him over. I'm going to run him over. I'm going to run him over. I'm going to run him over. And obviously, one of them did. Fair play. Congratulations. But in the Jake Matthews, in the Jake Matthews, Phil Rowe, Nico Price, Alex Morono, fucking Sean Strickland versus Costa, you name it. Half of these fights is just something isn't working, but it's working just enough to win you the fight. That'll do.
100%. I'm going to save you the hassle of totally breaking down the last 3 fights. We'll do a quick run through. I'll go through the results. Basel Hafez picked up a unanimous decision over Mickey Gall. Horrible fight. Like he was like looking for the overhand right, and then he just like found it early in the fight and just kept going through it for it. It was terrible fight. Alien Perez versus Jocelyn Edwards grudge match that turned into a pillow fight, and a split decision win for Andre Lima over Mitch Raposo. Dave Torelli again with a horrible scorecard in that fight, scoring round 1 to Raposo, no way. Andre Lima coming in overweight, looked it massively inside the cage as well. Any quick thoughts, any quick takeaways from those three fights, Harry?
I feel sorry for Mitch Raposo, to be honest. He looks like a decent fighter. Looks like a fighter that could do something in the UFC. Like, he's not going to win a title or anything, obviously, but looks like he could be a player in that division. And He got gamed. Like, obviously, I understand. He decided to take the fight, right? Tyson Chartier put out a post saying, "Oh, Mitch Raposo is a gamer. He won't turn down the fight. He's going to do this. He's going to do that." I wonder whether he still believes that that's the right choice now after seeing Andre Lima, who was just gigantic. Absolutely giant. He looked like a featherweight in there. Like, he looked absolutely massive in there. So I do feel sorry for Mitch Raposo. That's a tough pill to swallow. It really is.
100%. Yeah, I was thinking the minute I saw the two of them in the cage that he probably shouldn't have taken that fight. It was his UFC debut. Obviously, he wasn't going to turn it down. Would he have gotten another chance again? Who knows? Took the fight, lost the fight. He'll get another chance. Hopefully, he actually fights an active flyweight, because I think Lima needs to fucking move up the bantamweight now after that. That wraps us up for the 302 breakdown. The severe spotlight is not out yet, but you can see it shown on Islam Machachev. I'm sure, Harry, that will be out tomorrow. It will be out at the time you are listening to this. Thanks for listening. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. At BJJ_Harry Powell. Never even congratulated you on your brown belt in front of everybody. Normally I do it at the start. We kind of were talking about before we started recording. So congratulations, good sir, on you getting promoted to that. And I'm sure some of the congratulations will come after this podcast from everybody else as well. At O'Neill MMA is where you'll find me. We'll be back later on in the week for the severe setup. Until then, take care. Good luck.